spiel, which is due to the virtual format of today's meeting, I'd like to start by providing some guidelines. We have participants attending by computer and others who may be attending by phone. For all meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking. Mute your microphone when not speaking. If having technical issues, try joining the meeting using a different device, smartphone or tablet, or use the call-in information in the meeting invite to call into the meeting. As Megan noted, we don't have, Nancy has an excused absence. And then I don't know, oh, Tom looks to have joined as well as Anne. So I think Tom, are you able to fill in as a regular member this evening?
Yes, that would be fine.
Great. So now we'll be taking a roll call vote of, or not roll call vote. Now we'll be taking attendance, which I think Megan will be able to help us out with.
Yes, go ahead and just please say here when I call your name. Tom Anderson.
Here.
Saria Bola-Pragada.
Here.
Jamie Finch.
Here.
Cameron Fisher.
Yeah.
Rishi Hazra.
Here.
Dan Hintz.
Here.
Laura Labico.
Here.
Danny Madden.
Here.
Don McWilliams.
Here.
Ann Newcomb.
Here.
Great. And I do not see Janet Wall present this evening.
Great, thanks, Megan. Next up on the agenda, we have the approval of minutes from last meeting. Does anyone have any comments or questions on the meeting notes from that last meeting? Hearing none, checking the chat. Those minutes are unanimously approved. The next item on our agenda are public comments. Megan, do we have anyone that has signed up for public comment?
We do not have anyone that is signed up, but if we have a couple attendees, so if anyone would like to make public comment this evening, they can raise their hand.
Yeah, and just some guidelines for that. If you're on the phone, you'll press *3. If you're joining by computer or smartphone, look for the hand icon. This varies by device. And once you've raised your hand, Megan will be able to promote you to a panelist.
Great. And we have one person that is indicated, Connie Marsh. So I'm going to go ahead and move you to be a panelist. And you'll be able to unmute yourself and use video to make your comments.
There we go. Hi, I'm Connie Marsh, and so I read your agenda and I read the presentations, and what came to mind for me is how hard it is to understand who's in charge of the environment in the city of Issaquah. It's parceled out into all kinds of pieces. And so you all are getting bits and pieces of different departments without any sort of sense of the overall organization and how all the puzzle pieces fit together. So one of the things I would like to see to make it easier, I mean, you got to remember, I've been doing this for like 25 years, so I have a map in my head of all these component parts, and some of them are still blurry to me. So it's confusing. It's a lot to understand. And one of our problems in the city is there's no single person in charge of the environment. There isn't even a department in charge of the environment. It is, in theory, the entire city somehow working together to get us what we want in the environment. And it is sometimes successful and sometimes sort of a failure. So for today, the little group that's in public work engineering is presenting themselves. And they have always been very difficult to understand what they do. They rarely come out into the open and give presentations to city council, for example. So I'm going to give you my own perspective, which they can correct because they actually know exactly what they do in theory. Then that is maybe more of a layman's terms from the outside of what they do. So they take things that have been created because other people have the responsibilities for setting up how things are supposed to be created, and they look at those things and they say, hey, is it right? Is that created thing working? And if it's not working, can we do some adjustments to it? And somehow it all loosely is around water and water quality, which then would includes garbagey things. So it's sort of hard to get a grip on them because they don't really create a product that you see. You don't get metrics for how well they're doing because often they're judging how well other people are doing, and we never hear the results of that. And so of all of the environmental heroes that we have in our town, this is the hardest to define. And what I would ask is, are they looking at the right things? Are they bringing the information out to the world in a way that we know that they are being helpful? What could they do better? What's a waste of time, right? And I don't think anybody has ever looked at this grouping outside of themselves and public works engineering and said, are they doing the right things? Is this what we want? Do we want more? Is law enough? And so as you listen to their presentations, it would be interesting to like put a layer of, wow, is this good? Is this the right thing? Could it be better? Do I even understand it? And so that would be my ask for you today, because these guys are like the gray fog group. All right. So happy days. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Connie. Any other attendees looking to make comment, Megan?
I do not believe so. Just give me one moment here. If anyone else is wanting to raise their hand to make comment, feel free to do so. I see that we've had a couple people join us since. Does not look like it. We can go ahead and move on to the next item.
So I see that Dawn posted comment in the chat.
Can I comment on Connie's? Connie's there.
Yeah, Dan, I think that's probably fine, Don. Yeah, I think we don't typically respond directly to them, but if you would, to the public comments, but if you had something quick that you wanted to share,
It's more for the environmental board.
Yeah.
Connie, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Government is very big. It's hard to understand. I work in government. I appreciate your comments. And I just encourage the environmental board to ask a lot of questions as we hear what we hear today, and so you fully understand it.
Thank you, Don. Megan, is that, sounds like we don't have anyone else that's looking to make comments, so I think we can probably move into our agenda items. Before we joined, we were talking with all the presenters, and I believe the ideal format for questions is, if there's any burning questions, please do indicate that in the chat. We do want to make sure that there's no substantive comments in the chat, but please do indicate if you have a question or a comment during the course of the presentations, but the ideal timing for any other questions that are not really time sensitive would be at the end of their presentation. And then I think, Megan, I think you'll probably coordinate with them on bringing in the right presenters, correct?
Sure. So yes, we can. This is Megan Curtis Murphy. We can go ahead and have the first presenters, Brian Husmillo and David Stitzel, come forward. I believe Brian's going to go and get us started.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me? Good. Good evening. My name is Brian Hispilla. I'm with the City of Issaquah. I've had the pleasure of working with David and his staff at Full Circle Environmental, along with Megan Curtis Murphy with Office of Sustainability, with this most recent grant cycle for the local solid waste financial assistance grant. I'll let David speak to this in his presentation more. However, high level overview, the goal of the city was for solid waste diversion to landfills and to increase recycling and composting in the commercial sector. Previous year's performance metrics from Recology Cleanscapes, which is one of the city's commercial solid waste haulers, have shown a range of 39 to 42% materials diverted from the landfill, spanning across residential, multifamily, and the commercial sector. Our goal was to increase this number and is in line with King County's regional goals, which are to be considered in the city's climate action plan process. And this is 70% diversion of materials by 2030 and a zero waste resources. A little bit about David. Having started at Full Circle Environmental Inc. over 20 years ago, David has developed strategic contacts in government, the business community, nonprofits, academic institutions, and environmental agencies. David is regularly called upon by governments to provide assistance to both residential and business communities. He has worked directly with Fortune 500 companies, as well as mom and pop shops, to identify and implement realistic resource conservation opportunities, including the design and implementation of product stewardship programs for such diverse materials like paint, pharmaceuticals, electronics, lighting, carpet, and packaging. David has a master's degree in city and regional planning from Cornell University and a double bachelor's degree from Swarthmouth College. Is widely published and speaks regularly to national audiences. He can often be found wrestling with his 90-pound dog. And David, feel free to take it away.
Right, thanks so much. And Megan, I'll let you start the slides. And just want to thank everybody on the board for giving me this opportunity, as well as to Megan and Brian for the opportunity to provide Full Circle support to the city's programs. We've worked for the city in the past, and it's always a pleasure to work with the city of Issaquah. And I want to give you a brief overview here, run through a few slides of the recycling and composting business outreach and assistance program that we ran over the last months. And I think you'll find that the outreach results really suitably roll up into a lot of the goals of the city, whether that's climate goals or solid waste goals directly. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions about that. And in the spirit of Connie's comments, I will try to keep this as clear as possible, but really encourage you to ask me any questions at the end that allow me to clarify further. So why don't we go ahead to the next slide. And what I want to cover here are just to give you an overview of the goals. Brian did touch on this. We really wanted to not just establish norms, but continue the norms of waste reduction in the city of Issaquah. You guys have done a great job over the years of focusing on recycling, waste management, waste prevention, and this program wanted to be in that spirit and continue that norm setting. We also wanted to highlight for businesses the importance of recycling and of composting so that it would be elevated in their mind as an important component of doing business in Issaquah. And of course, we wanted to provide technical assistance to the businesses that wanted our help and that we felt could use some improvement or a tune-up on their recycling and composting. A little bit more context, we did focus on contamination issues. So when we would see garbage in the recycling or in the compost, that was certainly a red flag for us. And we also focused on diversion. Can we get even more recycling and composting going? We initiated our outreach virtually due to COVID, of course. And as things got safer and lifted a bit, we did expand into some in-person outreach, which is really our more typical mode over the last 25 years of doing this. We're used to being hands-on. And in terms of recruitment and finding the businesses that we wanted to work with, We published, as you can see in the inset there, a little blurb in the Issaquah Insider. We also canvassed a little bit, kind of dropping in on our business and saying, hi, I'm here to help. And we followed up on past leads because, as I mentioned, we've done a lot of outreach in Issaquah over the years, and we're aware of some businesses that we thought might be worth circling back to. So next slide, please. So here, you don't need to read all the fine print, but it will be there for you to review later. I just wanted to spotlight a couple of quick things, give you a sense of the scale of the outreach we were able to accomplish in the few months of the program. We did reach out to a lot of businesses. Many, were not available or were not interested or had gone out of business, often due to COVID. But we were able to call 40 some businesses. We visited many businesses. There's overlap between those two data point sets, just so you know. We reached a number of different types of businesses, and they each have their own unique problems. A large business is going to be different than a small one. A chain like McDonald's is going to be different than an independent mom and shop. A strip mall is going to look a little bit different from a property management standpoint than is a freestanding building or even a high rise, not that there are many of those in Issaquah. We really focused on contamination to some extent. We wanted to help folks understand that it's as important to keep the wrong thing out of your bin as it is to get even more of the right thing in your bin. And we identified a number of businesses where we felt that the contamination message was particularly appropriate and where we felt like those businesses would be particularly receptive to our outreach. And you can see in the bottom segment here some of the outreach materials that we provided just to give a scale to that component of our work. On the next slide, please. So you'll see a number of businesses wanted the bins that the city was giving away. They're really handsome bins. And I gotta say, there's nothing like an appreciated resource to really get a business to participate. I think they really liked getting the bin and felt therefore obligated to recycle more. So tools like that can be a useful piece of outreach and technical assistance and driving behavior change. We did add new compost service at the businesses you see listed there. And that adds a lot of volume and it keeps a lot of stuff out of the landfill. As I'm sure many of you know, you don't want food in the landfill because it does rot there. It can contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. And the more food waste we can keep out of the landfill and toward composting, the better. Obviously, food waste prevention is even better, but that was outside the scope of this particular project. Found a number of businesses interested in future follow-up with regard to compost, as well as with contamination and recycling. And just to give you the kind of big roll-up picture there in the last two frames, we did increase recycling by our conservative estimate, 63 cubic yards. And there is a typo there in the bottom. That's not pounds, that's tons. We looked at 18.3 tons of increased diversion. And these are both annualized. So we wanted to give a kind of baseline annual figure. So that's how we converted those estimated figures. Next slide, please. What I want to do now is just give you a few spotlights so you can really get a sense of what it's like on the ground, what challenges businesses face, and what we were able to do with them. So I'll give a few businesses and then we'll move into the final few slides on observations and recommendations. Dickey's Barbecue Pit was a business I personally visited, dropped in. It was a canvas style visit. They weren't expecting us. We met with staff to discuss recycling and composting and discovered through conversation that they were not recycling their number 10 tin cans. In the business, that's the number 10 tin cans are those big ones. I don't know if you can see my video screen, but they're about this big. And they hold, a lot of pickles, a lot of tomato sauce, a lot of whatever in a big tin can. And they're kind of a standard for the food service industry. And he was throwing them out. He just didn't realize they were recyclable. So we chatted about what is and isn't recyclable. We gave him that nice laminated poster he's holding there. And then his eyes really lit up when I said, hey, I can give you a free bin to help organize your recycling back there. And we just talked about do's and don'ts. provided the container, and hopefully he is off and running now with increased recycling. Next slide, please. Heritage Square, that is the property where Dickey's Barbecue is located. They've got a number of different locations for dumpsters. Some of them are behind the property, kind of abutting a green belt, and others are right there in the middle of the parking lot in a kind of enclosure. That's what you're looking at right there. There were some dumpsters in there that belonged to Cafe Rio, but Cafe Rio had closed due to COVID. And lo and behold, upon our inspection, it was full of trash. Looking at that trash, it was pretty clear it was coming from, I'm sorry, not Cafe Rio, Corner Bakery is the one that was closed. And looking in their dumpster, we saw trash. Inspecting that trash, we saw it came from Cafe Rio. Cafe Rio has their own dumpsters. They shouldn't be filling somebody else's dumpsters. And so we looked into that a bit, and I talked to Cafe Rio. I think we got that squared away. But on a subsequent visit, when I was there to also speak to Cafe Rio, they were another business that we helped, I found this illegal dumping. I think it's highly unlikely that these mattresses were put there by one of the local businesses in the plaza. I think, obviously somebody thought they were doing the right thing by not just leaving them in a gully, but this isn't so great either for the property manager. So I coordinated with Brian, and we talked a bit about how to handle the property and the situation. Thought it was a good idea to bring in the property manager, and we're still trying to reel them in. Property managers are very busy these days, and we have not managed to get a hold of them yet, but I think that will be a good next step. Next slide, please. This is Synergy Learning Academy. They're a school in Issaquah who I believe they contacted us, if I remember correctly, and they wanted some guidance on how to recycle, and by us, I mean the city of Issaquah, and they wanted some guidance on how to recycle some unusual items that they were really interested in keeping out of the landfill. They've got a strong environmental commitment, and they wanted to know what to do with ink cartridges, with their fluorescent light tubes, with their batteries. And upon visiting and talking to them a bit about resources and what exactly to do with all those strange recyclables, identified that they're also having an illegal dumping problem. So we created this little custom poster for them that we thought would fit in with the theme of the school and maybe be motivating to the folks who are doing the illegal dumping. I'm sorry to say that upon a subsequent visit, even with that lovely sign there, we found some inflatable swimming toys thrown over the enclosure and illegally dumped in their trash enclosure too. So, sometimes it's hard to tackle some of these problems, but we did conduct a training with the staff at Synergy Learning Academy about some of the new recycling initiatives, and contacted Recology as well to repair a wheel on their compost cart because it was inordinately hard to move that compost cart without a strong functioning wheel. And we connected Recology to the school to provide some future education around their composting of paper towels, which are allowed in their food waste composting cart. In the bottom right there, you see a seriously and dangerously damaged dumpster that we identified at McDonald's. You don't want anybody snagging themselves on that. It makes it less safe to service. And we were in touch with Recology and got that dumpster replaced. Let's move ahead. So hopefully that gives you some spotlights of what it's like on the ground. And I just wanted to share a few slides, beginning with this one, focusing on contamination and quality, on some of our observations and recommendations and themes. Obviously, we looked at cross-bin contamination. You don't want your compostables in your trash or your recycling. You don't want your recycling in your trash or your compostables, etc. And so we did education around that and tried to provide technical assistance. One of the themes we ran into, and Issaquah is not alone in this, is open dumpster lids. Sometimes those are left open by a business who simply doesn't want to be troubled with closing them in between each time they go out to throw stuff out. Sometimes it's just darn hard to lift that dumpster lid while you're throwing trash into it, so you just leave it open. Sometimes it's the hauler's issue, where they left the lid open and didn't close it after servicing it. And sometimes those lids get trapped against the enclosure when that dumpster is pushed back into place with the lid open. And when lids are open, rainwater goes in. At best, it makes everything super soggy and heavy, but it doesn't leak out of the dumpster. But still, when the truck comes, they're lifting that load into their either recycle truck or their garbage truck. It results in a lot of liquid leaking out of that truck as it drives down the road. It's a heavier truck, so it uses more fuel. Worst case scenario, you've got a leaky dumpster. And so the rainwater is percolating through your recyclables, making them not recyclable really, or it's percolating through your garbage. And in either case, it can become a stormwater issue because it's now dripping across the parking lot to the storm drain, having percolated through everything in the dumpster. Illegal dumping is often encouraged by dumpster lids that are left open. It just makes it all that more inviting. And so we really encourage the city, as you likely already have done, to make sure you understand your contract language that governs dumpster service with Recology, and that you look at your city code so that you know what tools you have in your toolbox with regard to managing either lid closure or illicit discharge from leaky dumpsters. Moving on to the next theme, we have cardboard needs to be flattened. You can imagine that if you put unflattened cardboard boxes in your dumpster, it fills it up really quickly, and then you've got people putting their garbage either mostly on the side of the dumpster on the ground because they can't fit it in the dumpster, in the recycling dumpster, and so that can be an issue. Sometimes the unfolded boxes just prop the lids open, so now you have rainwater going in the lid that isn't closed. So one idea is to consider using, again, I don't know if you can see my screen, I'll hold it up. This is called an easy box opener. It's kind of this cool plastic blade. It's got a lot of features on it that I won't bother going through. But you give these to a business and they're kind of psyched about tethering it to the dumpster or to their workroom. And it makes it really easy to just zip open that box, get it flattened, and that can be part of your Close the Lid campaign. And I know Issaquah is involved with a Close Your Dumpster Lid campaign that's happening region-wide, Full Circle supporting 4 other cities in deploying that. And it might be the case that you guys want to coordinate between the dumpster lid project that's more on the water side and the solid waste outreach side. Next slide, next theme is coordinating with the NPDES permit. I know the city is required, like all cities, to meet your permit for pollution discharge. So water quality issues from open dumpster lids certainly play into that. So open lid policies. Sometimes it's worthwhile to coordinate with other folks and field staff that you have out there, whether it's public health or your fire inspectors, maybe your restaurant inspectors. And the more eyes on the ground, the better. And the more they can coordinate and cross-inform each other, the better. So that might be something to consider as well. And then to reiterate here in this context, knowing what your hauler language is so that you can hold them to task for that. And then knowing what your city code language is around illicit discharge and dumpsters and lids is worth knowing as well. Next slide. Compost cart weight, it's interesting. This tale of woe comes from the Cafe Rio that I mentioned. We got them started on compost. They were super excited. They had their compost cart out back. They exuberantly filled it. And the next thing you know, it got so full with such heavy meat that they were throwing out that it was just too heavy for the recycling truck to service. It simply couldn't be lifted by the equipment. So Recology put what's called an oops tag on it, basically saying, oops, too heavy, we're not picking this up. And there was a lot of confusion over why it wasn't being picked up. And so we intervened when we were checking in with how their compost was going. They said our compost cart got left here. And it took a little bit of unraveling, but ultimately we figured out what was going on. And you can imagine it's not so fun to empty that cart to make it liftable by scooping in with your bare hands to remove all of that sloppy, messy food waste. So I think it's probably good in future outreach to make sure that when we talk to restaurants, we're really underscoring that there are weight constraints. And we might even want to put fill lines on the compost cart so that there's a sense of how full it can get at a given restaurant depending on the density of what types of food waste they're putting in there. Similarly, there are services that provide organics collection other than recology, and they support larger service levels. So you can actually have a dumpster delivered that you can put food waste into, and it has much heavier and bigger capacity. So that can be a recommendation to appropriate businesses as well, beyond the cart collection. Okay, moving on. I think we're near the end here. So ideas for future targets when the city does want to continue outreach, if you do. There are great observations made by your hauler. They're out there in the field. They empty every single cart out there. They often track contamination lists, and that's a really good list of businesses that are worth reaching out to. Sometimes you may have an interest in focusing on a type of material. Hey, this year, let's go after unflattened cardboard, or maybe plastic film is contaminating the compost a lot. So let's focus on businesses that might have plastic film. Alternatively, you might say, you know, this year, we really want to focus on a location. We're going to focus on Grand Ridge, or maybe we're really going to get Gilman Village some support this year, or the downtown core. Or maybe we're going to go through new buildings that just got building permits, and we're going to track them to see when they open and help them with garbage service. Sometimes it's good to focus by the type of business. As I mentioned earlier, a property managed facility is very different than a business that's freestanding and owned by its occupant. Business types also differ quite a bit. As you can imagine, dealing with a manufacturer and seeing what they want to recycle can be quite different than a healthcare setting, or say a big box store, or a food generating business like a restaurant or a grocery store. And there are a lot of partners out there, so I encourage you to think creatively, market creatively. The Issaquah Downtown Association is just one, but there are other trade associations, business associations, and partners that you can work with as well, just for efficiency's sake. I think there might be one more slide. And recognition. You know, who doesn't like recognition? It really helps build the culture and build the norming of behavior change into your program. So coordinating with existing partners, whether that's, you know, Issaquah Downtown Association, or maybe a champion business who's really excited about the environmental strides that they made. You might want to partner with them to reach out to their friends on city council or wherever, and move forward with existing partners. The Washington State Recycling Association has an annual Recycler of the Year award, and I often like to encourage businesses that we work with to go for that award, and they love it. Then you can kind of champion that throughout the city to show, hey, one of our member businesses won this statewide award, and it gets the business great recognition, the city looks great, and it again serves to kind of norm the behavior change that you want. And in a similar vein, I know in the past the city had your Golden Dumpster Award, so you could consider reviving something like that as a way to motivate business behavior change. And I think that's the last slide. So thanks for bearing with my fast-talking summary, and want to say thanks again for the opportunity to support your guys' work, and would love to respond to any comments or questions.
Thank you, David. As always, please put your questions or comments, or not the actual question themselves, but a note there. I do see a question from Laura. Do you want to start us off?
Sure. Thank you for presenting all of that information context. That was helpful. For a little more context, you said that 39 to 40% of waste is diverted to be recycled or composted. Could you tell us how many tons? Just, I'm curious. And also how many businesses in Issaquah there are in general. 41 seems a little hard to understand and grasp otherwise.
Yeah, and I'm going to defer that to either Megan or Brian, because my role wasn't really to track the city's big picture at that level. I do know that 39 to 40% diversion across all sectors, multifamily, commercial, and residential, isn't at all unusual. You know, when you parse out those three sectors, some of them have much higher recycling, So that's not an atypical rate, but in terms of the total number of businesses and the tonnage conversion for that 42% diversion, I would just have to make an educated guess. I don't track that data.
This is Megan. I can respond to one of those. We do get all of the data broken out by sector and how many tons that is, what the diversion is, and all that. So we do have that in the report. So I'd be happy to forward that information to the board. I don't have it on hand in my head. And Brian, you might be able to help with the number of businesses.
Yeah, I don't recall the exact number of businesses that we have in Issaquah. You know, it really does span across, you know, brick and mortar stores as well as in-home businesses. So the exact number I would need to get back to you on.
I should respond. Oh, sorry, Megan, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so this was one kind of outreach effort that we had through a grant contract. So we we're able to reach a certain number of businesses, but we also will do some outreach through Recology, our hauler, or we may use other grants to do commercial outreach. But this was just a limited time from January through May that we were working with Full Circle. So they were reaching out to the businesses at that time.
Exactly. And just to add a little bit more context to that, it was the balance between how many could we reach and what level of support did they need. You know, we didn't want to put all of our eggs in one basket and help one tiny business a whole lot with a single complicated problem, but we didn't want to go to the other end of the spectrum as well. So this was kind of a balance of how many businesses we could help at what level during the limited project period and budget.
Thank you, David. Don, I think you're next up. You had a couple of questions.
Yeah, so you kind of answered it, answering Laura's question. But my first question is, do you have any hard metrics on this program as far as goals and what success looks like? And then my second question, and maybe more of a comment, is are you guys aware of the dumpster summit that's going on with a bunch of the east side cities, and are you participating in that?
Megan, would you like me to begin responding and then let you jump in? Okay. Well, let's begin with the hard metrics question. Certainly we had goals. I believe it was 19 tons of diversion, and we actually remarkably met that goal almost spot on. I was a little surprised that it was so close. But, you know, that was kind of our educated guess of, okay, we've got this budget. We don't know how many businesses during COVID are even going to want our help or what they'll be willing to do when we make some suggestions. But it was our best educated guess at what type of improvements we could make. And so we did meet that target. As I mentioned, it's a conservative estimate. So just to give you an example, you know, we worked with a business, that one barbecue joint, you know, we kind of estimated, okay, he's now going to start recycling these cans. And let's estimate how much recycling that's going to be on a weekly basis. Let's do that conservatively so we don't accidentally inflate the numbers. That's going to scale up to this many cubic yards a week. That would weigh about this much if we use EPA's conversion factor to weight. And then we kind of scale that up by 52 to multiply by the year. I usually use 50 because I figure it's more conservative and some businesses are closed for a week or two over holidays, whatever. And then we have our metric and we can kind of use that. It's Full Circle provides support to many East Side cities and we use a similar metric for many of them. So Issaquah is, you know, right in there with that methodology. And we did meet the narrow goals that we set for this project. In a second, I'll let Megan speak to any bigger goals that this project fits into. Certainly, it's easy to convert a lot of our success into climate goals. There are so many excellent calculators out there for converting what we did into suitable GHG avoidance numbers. And so a lot of what we did on the material side can factor into climate goals as well. And now on the dumpster summit, yeah, it's an amazing summit. It's coordinating, I think, 40 different jurisdictions. Full Circle is providing support, consultant support to 4 of them. We've been involved from very early on, helping to do some of the early focus groups around those. as well as doing the inspections of those to see which businesses are making behavior change as we kind of look at them over time to see if they made change based on the interventions that various cities have done. And I will let Brian and Megan speak to any specific details about your guys' involvement in the dumpster summit, but it's I know you are involved. So thanks.
Brian, do you have anything to add there?
No, go ahead, Megan. I can speak after.
All right, this is Megan. Just overall with our goals, I think David summarized that pretty well. But Brian also mentioned at the beginning that we do have the 70% diversion goal for the city, so we'll be looking at that through our climate action plan, and acting on these sorts of outreach efforts and education are the type of things that we'll be looking at in that plan, specifically in how they relate to climate. So, for example, food waste reduction has the potential for more greenhouse gas emissions. That might be something that we look at through that plan as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, Tom.
Okay, am I unmuted? Okay, a couple questions. One on take-back requirements. Does the city invoke any sort of requirement on retail sellers that they take back the same kind of stuff they sell? For example, Lowe's will take back CFL light bulbs. They will not take back fluorescent tubes. And they sell fluorescent tubes, but they won't take them back. So what to do? What to do? Why are they making it so difficult? It's my opinion the city should require retailers, if they sell something like that that should be recycled, that they provide a means to recycle them. That's my feeling on that. Do you want to respond to what the city's position is on take-back requirements?
Sure, this is Megan. In general, we most of that is handled at the statewide level through product stewardship bills. So, for example, there was recently a paint stewardship bill that passed statewide so that people can return their paint to certain locations. In the city, the policies that we've looked at have been more about specific materials. So, for example, the city has a ban on styrofoam in the city. So rather than having a take-back program for that, we just don't allow styrofoam. We also require that all food service packaging be compostable or recyclable. So again, overall, the product stewardship most often happens at the state level, but the city does have some actions that we've taken along those lines.
Well, I mean, I can go to Best Buy and buy a TV, and inside that box will be a TV protected with styrofoam, and it's a problem getting rid of it. So when you say the city doesn't allow styrofoam, you're talking about just food-related styrofoam?
Correct, just food.
All right. Well, you should require Best Buy to take my styrofoam back. As part of the packaging of their product items. So that's this is a I'm just bothering on here preaching, but I think that this is a general principle that we should strive towards. That okay, if you sell something and it has some stuff in it that can't be put in the regular waste stream, then you shall provide a means to take it back from the customer and take care of it. So this is something I'd like to see us move towards anyway. And other things, well, I mean, like Lowe's sells electric things, like electric hedge trimmer. Well, when I go there to buy a new one, well, why can't I bring my old one back and have recycle it? They should be required to do that. There is a facility that does this sort of thing. One Green Planet in Renton is where I take stuff like that. Well, I happen to go through Renton now and then, so that's that I plan accordingly. But that's kind of awkward if you don't go through Renton. Make a special trip just kind of makes it. Well, our goal should be to make recycling easy, not hard. That should be the goal.
And this is
Um,
Megan. I have a comment to that. Just that one of the things that we did work on with our solid waste contract was to have the Recology store in town, specifically to take those hard to recycle type of items. So you are able to bring styrofoam to the store, appliances, those sorts of things. So we did want to make recycling those as easy as possible in the city. I know that's not the same thing as bringing it back to the store and having the responsibility for it, but we do try to make those recycling efforts easy. And I believe the store has reopened for some of taking those items back. It was closed for a while during COVID.
a long while. I didn't say it. So then that has been good. I have taken advantage of their services for that pre-COVID anyway. I have had some little disappointments. So for example, last time I brought something, I brought a CD player, those things used to be popular. CD player and a CD deck for my car, both of which I wanted to recycle. They accepted the CD player. They would not accept the CD deck from the car because God, that violates the rules. Oh, well, I thought the goal was to encourage recycling, not discourage. So anyway, that was a little crazy, in my opinion, crazy little nuance to the rules. Where did they come up with that rule anyway? I hope that's not coming from the city. That doesn't make any sense. Just because one goes in a car and one goes in a house, I'm not going to take one but not the other. Anyway, it is helpful though to have that service. But if we can provide them any guidance in that area, I'd recommend we have them be a little more lenient. Some rules like that.
Thanks, Tom. Are there any other topics that you'd like to cover with the group here, or is that kind of your main issue that you're hoping to bring up with the staff?
I did have one other question I wanted to bring up that may be too far afield. I don't know, but I'll just put it out there and then you can decide what to do with it here. It has to do with the expansion of the Cedar Hills landfill. As I understand it, that has been approved, and so that'll go forward. Does the city have a policy regarding the landfill and future expansions beyond this next one? What are we going to do when it comes time to expand it yet again? We give our waste to King County to deal with, so this is an issue that we are part of and a problem that we are part of, and coming up with a strategy for how we are going to manage our waste going into the future is I think requisite on us to. That's all.
Sure, I can have a comment about that. This is Megan. We did participate in the process of coming up with the King County solid waste master plan. All the jurisdictions were able to participate in that, and in the city, we try to work on waste reduction, making sure we're trying to reach our diversion goals to get as much out of the landfill as possible. So that's where we've been focusing our efforts here through some of the grant work, such as this work with Full Circle, again, through some of the work that we do with Recology and the outreach and education that we've done in multifamily, residential, and commercial. So really trying to kind of reduce that amount of waste first and then divert as much from the landfill as possible.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Cameron, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. Cameron Fisher here. David, firstly, thank you for your presentation and time this evening. Really appreciated the discussion. As a small business owner in Issaquah, I'm very interested to hear how, after seeing the Cafe Rio dumpster and the shared joy that they had, how the city works. If you could link the connection between how the city worked with the hauler, Recology, maybe the owner of the property, someone like Rowley Properties, and the local businesses to address overfilling dumpsters or those kind of issues.
Yeah, I can jump in from my quick perspective and then let Brian and Megan fill in there. Basically, we hear about an issue or we discover an issue, and then our job is to iron out the wrinkles. And so that involves communicating and communicating and communicating with every party involved. And that's often the property manager, as you outlined. And then even within the given business, there might be line staff, there might be floor staff, there might be a manager, there might be a district manager, there might be a corporate owner in Cincinnati that dictates, what happens with that franchise. And so every situation's a little bit different, but really I think it's mostly about communication, it's about signage, training, and that's what we try to provide is the connecting the dots of all of those players. So I know that's a 40,000 foot view, but that's kind of what it looks like from our perspective. In terms of operationally, what the city does on an ongoing basis, I defer to Megan and Brian.
I can go ahead. This is Megan. So in the city, when we have the contract going with Full Circle, that was great because they were able to provide that assistance to go in and help do some of that coordination. When we don't have those efforts going, the city has been able to step in sometimes and help coordinate those efforts through recology and property owners. Often businesses will talk with property owners directly first. If there are further issues that need to be addressed, you're welcome to reach out to our team and we can talk through some solutions.
You guys, thank you.
This is Brian, and I will say we have been trying to be more proactive in our outreach campaign. We've worked a lot recently with the Issaquah Downtown Association in regards to any solid waste issues, and a lot of it can, boil down to the correct sizing and scale of the actual dumpsters. So we have that option with our waste haulers to have them come on site and do a correct assessment and basically, like what David said, really iron out the details to see what's going on in their process and if need be upsize or downsize their waste receptacles.
Thank you very much.
And Laura, we are running a little bit behind schedule, but if you have a couple questions and comments, go ahead.
This one the question I can skip, which is just to ask more about illegal dumping, what that's defined as, not urgent, so we can skip it. And then for the comment, I think what this is highlighting for me is an aside. I Googled it, and according to the census, there are about 3,500 businesses in Issaquah. So you reach like a little over 1% of them, which is interesting. If I did my math right, which I'm not really trying to do. Anyway, I think to me, it seems like there's such a disconnect. Like it's easy to operate without visibility and to be less than committed to things that are urgent. So I was thinking like, it sounds like we need like an ambassador to be going. Can you hear me? My computer is glitching. An ambassador even to be that person who reaches out. Oh God, my whole screen is fading. And also to do something like the grading where you do a food grade, but instead of a food grade, it would be an environmental compliance grade where the amount that they're recycling gets them a certain score, so that there's a lot more visibility for each business to participate and what that means to everyone locally, so that I can actually go to a business, commercial or retail, and see what they're doing for me and my community.
Thank you, Laura. I did have one. This is Jamie. Thanks for speaking up. I did have one question, and this is both for David as well as staff. David, within the work that you were doing, what were the most effective outreach methods? You mentioned there was multiple different ways that you would engage with businesses. What was the most effective? And I think there's probably on one side the benefits of a business taking on new services versus correcting issues. Those might be different outreach methods. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure whether you're asking what's the best way to work with the business or what were the most effective fixes once we were working with them.
It was the initial engagement. What was the method that was the most effective for?
Okay, great. Well, there's nothing better than getting a call from the business that's already having a problem. I'm sorry they were having the problem, but when they come to you with a thorn in their paw, you really want to pull it out, and you work hard to pull it out, and they're grateful, and then their behavior kind of improves there on out. So even though maybe they were beginning with contamination in their recycling that the hauler noticed, and you show up and say, as gently as you can, I heard there were some problems here, you know, that really opens the door to a conversation. And I feel like that's very effective. When you don't have that and you're simply showing up at a business because you chose that geographic area and you're canvassing that plaza that day or something, then it's all about relationship building. And it's really about asking them questions as opposed to pontificating. It's, what's your biggest garbage headache? What's causing your staff the most time? You kind of get at it from the business angle, because for them, it's about time and it's about money. And yes, sometimes it's about the environment, but you really want to think about it from their perspective. So you're not just there saying, boy, are you messing up your recycling and I'm here to help. You know, that's not the right approach. But if you understand and ask questions to understand what's going on for them, maybe you can, as Brian said, increase their recycling dumpster, and now they can decrease their garbage dumpster, and you've just saved them some money every month. So those types of kind of business by business tailored support, I think, I love the ambassador notion that Lara mentioned, you know, that can really be helpful. Obviously, it's labor intensive, so that's a concern, but that can really be an effective driver, I think. And one very quick comment, just because I have the floor, is in response to Tom's comments. There are a newly launched paint program that Megan mentioned, and one for pharmaceuticals, where retailers are taking back pharmaceuticals and paint. And I really encourage the city to make sure that you have as many retailers as possible participating in that program, because then you take the burden off of you. And the burden is on the retailers who are taking stuff back from the public, and you're not relying on tax dollars anymore. It's part of the state law requiring manufacturers to do take back. So there is some progress being made, and I think Issaquah could foster and facilitate its business community to participate in that. So thanks for that editorializing. And Megan, did you have a comment about outreach techniques?
I think you pretty much covered it. Yeah, we do the full gamut of outreach, and it depends on kind of the what the outreach effort that we're doing is.
Great, thank you, Fiona. One more question. As you see the situation today where we're trying to get from, I think it was 40% to 70%, is the biggest opportunities in enforcing the existing expectations for businesses or new expectations for businesses? Where do we see the biggest opportunity looking ahead? And this could either be for city staff or David, depending on their perspective.
I can start briefly and see if David has anything to add. I think that I think it's a mix of both. I think it's a mix of there's still a lot of food that's going in the garbage. There's still a lot of paper that's going in the garbage. So there's a lot more education that can be done, and there's a lot of I think more audiences and businesses that could be doing more. However, there definitely are some materials that don't have as much of a market to be recycled. Either, you know, the market is fading, or there was never a market developed for that. So that's something that we work with the county on regionally, some as well, through those conversations at that kind of the county municipal level to try to find new markets for items. You know, clothes comes to mind. There's a program called the Red Cycle where people can recycle, you know, torn or any kind of conditioned clothes, as long as it's not, you know, wet and moldy. So there are those new markets being made, but you know, some people are still throwing clothes in the trash. So there's kind of both of those levers. I don't know if David has anything to add on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great question. And I'll just add that, well, it's a big discussion to be had from more of a strategic standpoint. The one spotlight I will shine is on food. Food is such a big contributor to the landfill, and it's a huge climate issue, not only in terms of the food waste going to our local landfill, but in terms of wasted food and all of the water it took to grow that apple and all the fuel it took to drive that apple to us, and then it just gets thrown out, and that didn't provide any food value. So whether you're looking at waste prevention kind of upstream so that you're not having as much go moldy, or you're looking at, and that's kind of typically wasted food, where you're not getting it into the mouths of people who might actually need it, and food diversion toward food insecure people. But there's also food waste. And that's the stuff we all have in the back of our fridge that we forgot about and rotted, and now might go to the landfill if we don't compost it and be a problem. So you can, the statistics on the impacts of wasted food and food waste and how much of it is out there are staggering. And I think if a municipality were to focus on that, they would go a long way toward moving toward both climate goals and materials management goals. So that's a great place. The other thing that comes to mind is construction and demolition debris. And that the way the state counts things may not be included in Issaquah's numbers for commercial, residential, and multifamily, but it is a big tonnage, and it's a little bit easier to find sometimes because you know where it's being generated and you kind of know the markets it can move into. So C&D waste, as it's called, construction and demolition waste, can be another good area to spotlight.
Great, thank you, David, and thank you, Megan. And I think I'm not seeing any more questions or comments. So I think thank you, David and Brian, for your time. And we'll be moving on to our next agenda item, environmental regulatory compliance program overview. So Evan, Julie, and Brian, feel free to take the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And while I'm waiting to get presenter privileges, just want to touch on the last one of the items we were talking about in the last presentation on the Recology store, and it is not open yet. They're having trouble staffing it. As we all know, there's kind of a staffing issue kind of nationwide right now because of all kind of COVID stuff. And so the alternative that you have right now is to you can actually schedule a pickup of all those different items that you would recycle at the Recology store. You can schedule that pickup from your house, and they will come and pick it up right from your curb. So if you guys want that resource, I can send that out to you after this, following up, for sure. Can you see everything? Can you see the presentation? Okay, all right. Thank you for letting us come here tonight and present to you on our Public Works environmental regulatory programs. The Public Works Department is broken up into two separate branches or divisions of the same tree. One being our operations division, which installs and maintains our public infrastructure of drinking water, roads, sewers, and stormwater systems. The other being our engineering division, which plans, designs, and constructs our public infrastructure. This presentation will be on the environmental regulatory programs housed in the engineering division of Public Works. Regulatory programs are simply programs that are required. The requirement is either internal through our city code or external through various agencies like the Department of Ecology or FEMA. So who are we? We're a small team that's housed in the Public Works Engineering Division. My name is Evan Brumfield. I'm an Environmental and Regulatory Program Administrator here for the city. I've worked at the city for almost 13 years. Half of that, my first half, I was in operations in the Storm and Sewer Division department, and the last half I've been over in engineering. Some of my duties include NPDES permit coordination, solid waste contract administration, spill and IDDE response, our FEMA community rating system coordination, which is our floodplain, and pollution prevention technical assistance at our local businesses. Julie?
Hello, my name is Julie Ortiz. I've been with the City of Issaquah for over 4 years, and my title is also Environmental and Regulatory Program Administrator. But what that actually means is that I help oversee our pollution prevention business inspection program, as well as our mitigation and monitoring sites. I support NPDES implementation and several waste reduction programs, and I coordinate our car protection efforts, in addition to providing spill response and technical support for other departments. Brian?
Good evening again. My name is Brian Hismillo. I've been with the City of Issaquah for a little over 2 years now. I previously worked for King County Industrial Wastewater, My main duties include pollution prevention assistance, NPDES implementation, spill response, management and monitoring of the city's decant facility, and solid waste contract management.
So what do we do? In the Public Works Engineering Division, we have both regulatory and non-regulatory environmental programs. An example of one of our non-regulatory programs is our stream sampling program that we do here in the city. In nine different locations along our creeks and streams, we sample 2 times a quarter for 8 times a year. That data is currently being used in our Storm and Surface Water Master Plan, which was presented to you in March, to help prioritize our planning efforts in our watersheds. The following slides, we're going to be going over a high-level summary of each of these 10 regulatory programs. Even though these programs are regulatory, our environmental team is progressive in our enforcement as much as we can be. When I say progressive, we really try to educate and provide our technical assistance rather than just going right to enforcement. But then we will bring in code enforcement if our education and technical assistance isn't getting the results. So as you can see on this picture right here, this is Brian doing our water quality sampling on Issaquah Creek. So number one, the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, or the NPDES permit. This slide may look somewhat familiar to you as I presented this to you all in March, going over our stormwater management plan. The NPDES permit, or the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit, is an ecology issued permit to cities. The NPDES permit allows Issaquah to discharge our stormwater to waters of the state, which are our creeks, groundwater, and lakes. And as long as we meet and implement the processes and programs identified in the permit to protect water quality, we can continue to discharge our stormwater. So some examples of environmental programs deriving from the permit is our pollution prevention program with local businesses, our stormwater infrastructure maintenance inspections, and our IDDE spill response. Each of these we'll be going over in future slides here in this presentation. So spills, illicit discharges, detection and elimination, or IDDE. Illicit discharges that are essentially pollutants that enter our stormwater system that shouldn't. No pollutant should really be in our stormwater system. But NPDES requires us to respond and investigate these illicit discharges and eliminate them. Some common examples of illicit discharges include vehicular accidents, pet waste, residential car washing, and sediment from construction sites. Staff are notified of these illicit discharges through field observations, either from internal staff or from residents. And we have our city spill hotline, which is here at the bottom of this slide, which this is what we try to get people to call first, because that actually gets someone that you can talk to. And then we have our submit a request feature on our city website homepage. So what happens when we find a contamination or something in our environment that shouldn't be there or in our stormwater system? Well, we have our staff that are trained to use field observations. And these field observations include, using our senses. So if we are looking in like this storm drain here, if you could see it over on this left side with this kind of muddy water running into it, if we're looking in there and, we see a color or something that just doesn't belong, or maybe some biological activity in a stormwater system, that can maybe kind of get that spidey sense tingling a little bit, and like maybe we need to do a little more further investigation on what's happening there. We also can use our sense of smell. So again, if we're looking in a stormwater system and we have a strong odor of sewer, well, definitely sewer shouldn't be in our storm system either. So we would want to investigate that a little further. And then auditory as well. So if we have, we're in a drought like we've been experiencing these last couple of years, and we're looking again in a stormwater system, and all of a sudden we're hearing some rushing water sounds or something like that, that would again trigger us to investigate a little bit more, figuring out what that is. We also do water quality sampling in addition to our field observations to help identify the sources. So if we do find an illicit discharge, we coordinate with our operations division and contact Department of Ecology if necessary, and we work to mitigate impacts through either cleanup measures or containment. So on the left here, you can see this kind of muddy water running in. This was actually an internal notification. One of our staff drove by, saw this, and called our city spill hotline. And what happened was we had a contractor who was asphalt cutting in this parking lot, and they did not suction or use a vector to get rid of their asphalt slurry. And so we were able to, this is a private property, so we were able to work with the property owner to clean it up, make sure, investigate their storm system, make sure there was no further impacts to our stormwater system or any of our creeks or lakes. In the middle here is our, this was a dump truck accident, lost brakes going down Southeast 43rd and like barreled through the roundabout there at the bottom of the hill. Punctured their diesel tanks, leaking diesel all over the ground and into our garden bed right here. We have our vector truck on site to vector up the diesel as well as the contaminated soil. We had to do further environmental sampling with this, coordinating with ecology to ensure that we had removed all the contamination to have a stabilized site. And then on the right here was just someone walking into work in the morning and they saw this kind of sheen and wet spot, and we had one of our city vehicles had a gas tank that was punctured with someone trying to siphon the gas. And so we were able to respond, clean, isolate it before it became a bigger issue. So next is our FEMA, our Community Rating System, or CRS. So Issaquah has a long history with flooding and floodplain management. When we were talking about floodplain, we are usually referring to our 100-year floodplain. And a 100-year floodplain is the area of land predicted to flood during a 100-year storm, which can also be explained as the area of land that has a 1% chance of a flood to happen in any given year. Since Issaquah has floodplain and we want our residents to be eligible for federal flood insurance, Issaquah is a member of the National Flood Insurance Program, or NFIP, required under FEMA. This allows our citizens to be eligible for flood insurance and the city be eligible for flood mitigation grants, which a lot of times get paired up with salmon enhancement, but we also use them for elevating our homes out of the floodplain as well. Further our floodplain management, Issaquah is also a part of the Community Rating System, or the CRS program. The CRS is a voluntary incentive program that recognizes and encourages community floodplain management practices that exceed the minimum requirements of the NFIP. Issaquah's floodplain programs and standards put us at a CRS rating of Class 5, which gives our residents a 25% discount on our flood insurance rates. The CRS scale goes through 10 to 1, 10 being the I guess 1 being the best and getting the most discount. There's no other city in King County with a higher CRS rating than us. There are others that are Class 5 as well. And as you can see here on these pictures, we have our, this was pre the Atlas Apartments when we had our big old bathtub that was right there. This is the Safeway and the bank. So yeah, flooding is an issue. On the right here, we have a kind of an overview map of the floodplain in the city. We have Issaquah Creek kind of running up the middle, and then we have our Tibbetts Creek over there on the left. The blue shaded area is our 100-year floodplain. So we also have our on-site sewage system, or OSS program. The majority of our city residences and businesses are connected to sewer main and pipes. But the remaining of these city residences and businesses have an on-site sewage system, or what's also called a septic system. So if you have a septic system, you're not connected to our city sewer mains or pipes. An on-site sewage system is basically an underground treatment system for your wastewater in your home, and that system is typically located all on your property, hence the term on-site. Wastewater is water that goes down the drains and pipes in your home from your bathrooms, kitchens, or kitchen. Some people maybe have two kitchens, and laundry areas. So you can see in this kind of graphic down here at the bottom from Seattle King County Public Health, this has a really good kind of overview of what a septic system looks like. You have your house, drains that come down into a septic tank. And once it hits that septic tank, there's kind of a solid settling that happens. And after those solids settle, the water then goes into a distribution box, which then gets dispersed into your drain field, which then allows the water to percolate and absorb into the soil around your drain field. So in Issaquah, we have a septic inspection program for properties with septic systems that are located within 200 feet of our city sewer mains and pipes. And much like all infrastructure that's built, that's like pipes, roads, bridges, they are built to last a certain time frame before they fail. So our septic inspection program makes sure that when these septic systems fail, the property can connect to our city sewer system to maintain Seattle King County public health regulations and to protect water quality. And Julie.
All right. So sometimes city improvement projects like road expansions or bridge construction can damage or harm critical areas like wetlands, which triggers the need for environmental mitigation. This is most often done through wetland enhancement restoration projects, which are governed by permits issued by the Department of Ecology or Army Corps of Engineers. These permits have specific timeframes and performance standards that we must achieve. And Issaquah works with specialized contractors like Mountains of Sound Greenway Trust, so shout out to Dan who works there, we work with him closely, and Earth Corps, who successfully perform site monitoring, which looks at things like plant diversity, plant coverage, invasive species. They also perform site maintenance, which is seasonal removal of invasive species or infill planting and sometimes irrigation. And they help us to submit our annual reports, which are basically a status check to the regulator throughout the 5 or 10-year permit cycle. At the completion of the permit cycle, or when the site meets the performance standards, sometimes we have to extend that if we're not meeting performance standards, the site should be well established and mature enough to thrive relatively unmanaged. So for example, vegetation should be providing enough shade to inhibit invasive species growth, and native plants would no longer be dependent on irrigation. If these sites are on property that's owned by the city, then they transition into the Parks Department and are managed within the open space program upon permit completion. And so in this photo, you'll see a transect, which is a string that's attached to a fixed permanent location on either end. And by documenting the progression of vegetation that intersects that line over time, we can collect data on how well the site is or isn't doing. Next slide. So the city also has a robust pollution prevention program, which includes participation in the Department of Ecology regional program to conduct business inspections where we offer education, outreach, and technical assistance at no charge. These visits are unannounced, so we get to see the business in real time, real action, everyday kind of stuff. And we walk through the inside and outside so we can understand how they manage their waste or other pollution generating activities. And this often includes looking at chemical storage. So do they have secondary containment? We're going to look at spill prevention. Do they have a spill kit on site? Do they even know where it's at? Does the staff know how to use it? We're going to talk to them about waste disposal records and find out if they can show proper documentation for chemical disposal. We're going to have a conversation with them about any wash water disposal. If they're mopping the floors, is that water being dumped out the back door or down a drain that goes to sewer? And do they have floor drains in their business? And if so, where does it flow? Are they putting anything down it? Hopefully not. Or anything else that raises questions as we learn a little bit more about their business activities. These visits are conducted every 2 to 4 years, and it just depends on the type of business, the volume of chemicals they may have, or any prior issues that we worked with them on. We conduct about 90 visits per year. Half of our visits require ongoing follow-up or continued education to ensure corrective action has been taken and achieved. And to date, we have conducted over 480 visits to unique businesses within the city. And in this picture on the left, you'll see staff who was working with a local dry cleaner within our CARA to receive a combined $40,000 from the Department of Ecology in King County, which allowed them to replace a PERC dry cleaning machine with a professional wet cleaning system. And you probably have all heard of PERC, so you know it's bad. So that was a big win for the city, especially in our Cara. And then the picture on the right is of an open dumpster. We talked a little bit in the previous presentation about how that's problematic. But it allows rainwater to collect in the dumpster, and it can flow out as what's called dumpster juice commonly. And that can be transported or can transport pollution into nearby storm drains and surface water. And we really find that education is the key. People want to do the right thing. They just don't always know what that is or take the time to necessarily do it. So we just try to work through a lot of that with these businesses, and quite often we're successful. Next slide. All right, so groundwater within Issaquah provides over 50% of our drinking water. In 2020, this equated to over 590 million gallons. So we recognize that groundwater is an essential resource to protect and preserve. So let's talk this through a little bit more. The Cara is an area where rain, surface, or stormwater infiltrates into the ground in order to recharge or replenish groundwater as it flows through our valley floor. Think of this like filling a bathtub. This is where CPD and their long-range planning goals come into play as development, impervious surfaces, or stormwater management can impede or enhance recharge. Cara classifications are determined based on how long it takes groundwater to reach a drinking water well, which is also known as the travel time. We have upcoming Title 18 revisions, which will incorporate updated Cara and wellhead maps based on the results of some new modeling and improved understanding of subsurface groundwater behavior. You guys can keep track of that in the future. Wellhead protection relates to the area around a drinking water well, where the well draws water. So think of this like sucking water up through a straw. This is where proactive pollution prevention activities and oversight really matters. Our city code defines Cara as a critical area, which allows us to be more prescriptive and therefore proactive than county, state, or federal regulations alone. Essentially, businesses within the class 1 and 2 Cara boundary who are likely to have chemicals or may be of a higher environmental risk based on the nature or type of business they're doing, they receive more stringent business inspections and are subject to additional spill response and storage requirements for large quantities and types of chemicals. And in fact, Issaquah's Cara protection programs and requirements were recently featured in the Department of Ecology's updated Cara protection guidance as an example for other jurisdictions to model. And in this picture on the left here, you'll see some large totes containing chemicals, which are stacked on top of each other over secondary containment. They're labeled with the contents and any health or environmental risks. There's a yellow drum overpack on the right. It's kind of obscured by someone's jacket, which will help them respond to any sort of, it has spill supplies in it, which allows them to respond to any spills. And that's it for me, Brian.
Thank you, Julie. I'll be covering today's private stormwater infrastructure program. So what is stormwater infrastructure and why is it important? Stormwater infrastructure is made up of drains, pipes, ponds, vaults, and ditches that convey and to a limited extent treat stormwater runoff before it reaches a local receiving waters. So that's creeks, streams, lakes. These systems are designed to primarily trap sediment, but if properly maintained and functionally operational, they can help trap and reduce the amount of contaminants released into the environment. Currently, the city of Issaquah has approximately 270 sites in our inspection program. These sites are inspected every 3 years, but may require additional attention on behalf of the city if there have been compliance issues in the past. Under the most recent NPDES permit with the Department of Ecology, this program will soon be transitioning to becoming our local source control program in 2023. Some of the most common issues that we see are resolved as a result of our inspection program, and these include sediment removal, repairs to flow control structures, line jetting, and water quality cartridge replacement. And if you can see here in the slide, this is an outfall that was actually damaged due to some beaver activity. And on the right is just a photo of us completing a stormwater vault inspection. Next, please. In addition, we also have a fats, oils, and grease program, or FOG. What FOG is a pollutant that enters the city's sanitary sewer system and can cause downstream impacts to our lines and system. Instances of negative impacts include buildup of pipes when it solidifies and or hardens, causing overflow and extensive building damage. The two types of FOG are petroleum and vegetable based. The ones that we are concerned with in our city's inspection program are focused on vegetable and animal-based FOG. So essentially restaurants and grease-generating facilities. Under Issaquah Municipal Code 1638, restaurants in Issaquah are required to install and maintain grease interceptors, or if you've heard of them as grease traps. These structures capture grease and allow the proper disposal by a certified waste hauler. Not all the used grease by restaurants go directly into the grease interceptors. As the first line of defense from FOG entering the system, grease generating facilities collect and store fats, oils, and grease in grease receptacles, such as covered drums, which are then hauled away by a licensed food hauler to an approved waste facility. Additional BMPs, or best management practices, include that food wastes are properly disposed of in a garbage or composting collection bins, proper maintenance of kitchen exhaust filters, and oils and grease spill response plan, and most importantly, and the most effective, is employee training. Restaurants unwilling to maintain their grease interceptors can have their water shut off and therefore closed down by Seattle King County Public Health until all maintenance and or repairs have been completed. In this slide, you can see an example of us of the city needing to shut off the water due to, as you can see, solidified grease in the lines, and on the far right, the improper maintenance and scheduling of their grease interceptor. This was located within, I believe, 50 feet of Issaquah Creek. And so, as you can see, this did have downstream impacts. Next, please. And lastly, the city has a industrial waste program in which we have a discharge authorization with King County Industrial Waste. King County is a delegated authority which governs the rules and regulations that industrial users can discharge to King County's wastewater treatment plants. Dischargers of industrial waste, in the city's case, contaminated stormwater, are required to meet King County's local discharge limits for all contaminants, including but not limited to heavy metals, settable solids, oil and grease, and pH. As I mentioned before, the city has a major discharge authorization with King County Industrial Waste and is required to sample for and report out on quarterly to maintain compliance. In the slide here, you can see on the top left, the city's Vector truck. We have two of those in which they essentially suck up sediment and contaminants and stormwater drains. The upper right is the city's decant facility, which the Vector truck will essentially empty the contents where solids are allowed to settle out, and then that is then pumped to sanitary sewer. All flows flow to a South Treatment Plant in Renton, and that is a photo of the wastewater treatment plant in Renton. Next. And that concludes our presentations. If anyone has any questions for myself or Evan and Julie. Thank you.
Jamie speaking. Thank you to you three for the presentation. And I know Megan left a comment in the chat around us going a little bit over it. Just wanted to make sure there weren't any people that had any concerns with us getting some questions or any comments before we finish the meeting. So any concerns with that? Great. So looking in the chat, looks like Anne, you have a question.
Yes, thank you. This is Ann Newcomb. And thank you so much for your presentation and all the important work that you do. I'm curious, I think maybe Larry Franks brought this up last time. He's from Fish. When you're testing, do you test for the 6-ppd, which is the tire contaminant that's killing the salmon? And if so, are you finding it in Issaquah Creek?
Hi, this is Brian. I can speak to that. We have gotten a lot of interest from the community surrounding 6-ppdq. The city is a subcommittee from the Stormwater Work Group that is specifically looking at 6-ppdq. The city is being very proactive, and we have actually partnered with UW-Tacoma in regards to the effectiveness of stormwater treatment facilities that the city owns. And we are currently looking at 2 sites. One is a cartridge filter vault and a modular wetland. We had just conducted our first round of sampling and testing a couple of weeks ago, and so we're waiting to hear back about the analytical results. There is a caveat though, there is still a standard method which needs to be determined and approved on, and so that is kind of the limiting factor in what we're wanting to do. But yes, to answer your question, the city is aware and very proactive in our approach.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Is there a way that we could, when you find out, if we could stay in the loop?
I can talk with Megan about getting that information out to you. But yes, we're trying to be as transparent as possible, especially considering that we know that this is a big concern to the community.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Jamie Finch speaking. It looks like that might be the questions that we have. So thank you, Evan, Julie, and Brian, for your time. We'll then now move on to the next agenda item, which is any reports. Megan, do we have any reports?
My quick report, this is Megan, is that just on upcoming meetings. So for the meeting on July 14th, we'll be diving into the climate action plan. We're working right now to kind of start developing the goals, the targets, the strategy, and so we'll be bringing some information to the board to get your initial input. We're working kind of internally with our staff teams right now to start to develop that content, so we'll be able to share it with you at the next meeting on the 14th, and looking forward to hearing input on that. We are going to have a second meeting in July, so July 22nd. We've been invited to the Planning Policy Commission's meeting, so that we can have a joint meeting on Title 18 to have a bit of an educational session on the environmental sections that are going to be coming before the board for your input on the land use code update. So that will include the critical areas, the tree codes, various other environmental components. So that'll be an opportunity to hear kind of the overall process, start to hear about those topics and ask some questions. So we won't be looking at specific code updates yet in that meeting, but it'll be kind of an intro to some of that topics. And that's all I have from me, but I see that Dan has a question about future meetings.
Yeah, I was just kind of following up on the presentations from Brian, Julie, and Evan. I was just trying to kind of remember back to March, and I know when Gary presented, there was talk about getting some prompts set out, because I know that discussion was really, I think, felt cut a little bit short, and I'm hoping I didn't totally miss that, but I feel like there were some conversations around soliciting some feedback on process schedule, prioritization metrics, geographic scope, and stuff that I think relates definitely to the presentation we just had here. And just was curious if that's on a future agenda, where kind of that process is at.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is Megan, the Storm and Surface Water Master Plan. It's gone around to council and a couple boards for input and is going to be coming back to the environmental board. I don't have the meeting date set for that yet, but I will get that probably in the next coming weeks and we'll be able to add that to the schedule. I believe you are correct that I was going to be sending out kind of one of those presentations to view for the board, and I will go ahead and make sure I send that shortly after that meeting, or after this meeting. We had those mostly going around in May, so we should have those up to be recorded now.
This is Jamie. Great, thank you, Megan. Did that cover also the other business and announcements discussing the schedule, or was there another item there that you wanted to cover?
This is Megan. There was actually one more thing really quick. The CIP that the council, that the environmental board provided input on, that was adopted at the council meeting on Monday. Again, thank you for your input for that. It was the first year we were doing this process, but I think it was really great to have the boards look at it. And I think thank you for both the input on the process itself as well as the CIP. So we'll be looking at that to shape the process for next year as well. I'm not sure if any other board members have had any report outs that they wanted to do.
This is Jamie. Seeing none, I think we can adjourn. Oh, Megan, I see you raising your hand.
I saw Janet raising her hand.
Janet. Oh, I think you might be muted, Janet.
Yes. First year, this will be my seventh year. I've been making a concerted effort to remove tansy ragwort, which is a Class B noxious weed from the Issaquah area. And it's a real problem because it's our main Class B noxious weed, which means it's required to be removed. Tansy ragwort's a particular problem because it can cause liver damage in grazing animals, especially horses, but also various other animals. And we really know whether it causes problems with deer or other wildlife. So, and it also produces, a single plant can produce 150,000 seeds, which are like little tiny dandelion seeds, and they blow with the wind. So last year, I counted up, and last year I had 75 sites that I was trying to remove tansy ragwort from. So I could really use help because sometimes I had to just give up because it was just too much. One of the areas that I wanted to touch bases with was the Issaquah High School. I've been trying to get the ground staff to work on removing the tansy, which has gotten out of control, and it's spread to a neighboring church and across the street, and causing a real problem. And I did what I could, but I couldn't get all of it, and it went to seed. So I'm especially thinking that maybe the green team with the Issaquah High School would be interested in helping me remove the tansy ragwort on the grounds. But there's also lots of other trails that I don't have time to monitor all of them. And so that's an opportunity if you'd like to join me. I can give out my phone number, and you can give me a call, and we could discuss what you might be interested in doing. I could describe a little bit more about how I do it. So anyway, my phone number is.
This is Jamie. Thank you, Janet. Megan, any other hands up or anything else? Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great night. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.